Okay, that's good. That's good.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Okay, so no exciting title for today's Shiur. It's very straightforward. We're going to talk about Selichos or Selichos.
I thought it was early risers.
Early risers, just because, as we'll see, that's the Indian of getting up early and being Marbet Tachanunim. I'm going to try to discuss 5 points to Selichos. Some of them might be new for some, but many of them just might be chazara of some of the ideas behind the Selichos and behind the piyutim that we say, and it should be a chizik for us as we get ready for the Yemei Adin. So I just wanted to start, the first source is really a ton of the Be'eliyo. It's a medrash, which is really expounding on the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah as a source in Chazal for Selichos. As we'll discuss a little bit later, most of the Selichos that we say were written by the Rishonim or Goinim. They're not written by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah like the Our Seder HaTfilah. Nonetheless, we do find in Chazal and in many places throughout the Navi that we are encouraged to be Marbet Slicha before HaKadosh Baruch Hu to ask for tshuva. And here, just in turn, the Be'eliyo darshans on the pasuk we said this morning in davening, Yancha Hashem b'yom tzara, Hashem should answer us on our day of distress. That's a pasuk in Tehillim, because David HaMelech knew that ultimately the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed and there won't be an opportunity for us to bring karbanos. So he was mitzvah on Klal Yisrael. How is Klal Yisrael going to have a kapara if we don't have the opportunity to bring a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells David, B'shah shahatzar ba'is al Yisrael, when Klal Yisrael is overwhelmed with sorrows, ba'avonesehem, Yamdu lefana yachad ba'aguda achaz, let them come before me as a group unified. V'yisvadu avonesehem, and let them come and say vidoy, confess on their sins. Lefanai v'yoymu lefanai seder slicha v'ani enel yisrael. Let them come and say before me this order of slicha, and I will forgive them. Now, of course, this is talking about particularly Yud Gimel Midos, which is the focal point of our slichos, saying the 13 attributes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mercy. But nonetheless, from here we see a source that the idea of slicha as an overall idea is something that we are now going to say as a instead of the karbanos, as a source to get a slicha and forgiveness for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it ends off the last couple lines of the paragraph here. It says, "Ubishah sheYisrael miskatz in the fanai v'oimd in the fanai ba'aguda achas." When Klal Yisrael joins together in the group, v'oimd in the fanai say the slicha, and the eno yisam that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is maftiach us. He promises us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will answer us if we join together properly to say the slicha. So here we have just a very strong source. Again, it's really expounding a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu the Yud Gimel Midas Arachamim, with the idea that we should use it to beseech Hashem for forgiveness. So many people have a challenge during the way, at least Minhag Ashkenaz. I'm not sure if you have any Sfardim here. We say Slichos primarily for a week before Rosh Hashanah, basically, and then we'll say during the whole Seres Mei Tshuva. And people say, well, listen, I have my Daf Yomi before Shacharis, I have a late night Chavrusa, I'm busy learning all the time. So, slichas are very nice, but if it's going to interfere with my learning schedule, we say every morning in davening, the Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. So, let me get my regular sleep, let me stick to my regular chavrusa, and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I'll be busy, I'll be a good Jew, I'll daven then. Of course, I'm Yarei Shemayim, I'm learning, I'm not just wasting my time, but I don't want to invest so much time in slichas. So, the Chidah, already a couple hundred years ago, writes about this, this is in source number 2, the Birkei Yosef. The Chidah, it's quoted in the Shulchan Aruch and the Sha'ar Tshuva, and the Mishmur quotes a similar idea as well. He says that, it's better, it's better in these days to dedicate our time to being marba and slicha and working on our davening as opposed to our regular learning. He says, I've seen many great rabbanim the rest of the year they were involved in learning halacha or writing svarim or other sifrei halacha. Comes El time, they would change their schedule a little more gears of it to learn the siddur, to go through the slichos, to go through the siddur, so we should familiarize ourselves with what we're going to be saying. As we'll soon discuss further, many of the words are unfamiliar to us. It's written very poetically and it's challenging. So if we don't spend the time beforehand to properly familiarize ourselves with what's going to be happening in the slichos and in the machzor, we're really just showing up and reading things which are challenging to understand. So it says the Chidah, not only should we not use Torah as an excuse not to say slichos, but we should limit our learning for the idea of spending more time preparing ourselves for davening. And similar, the Elef HaMogen, which is found in the bottom of the Mata Ephraim, and Achron, he says the same idea. He says he heard that there were some people who said only 2 days of Selichos. They would say the first day of Selichos and Erev Rosh Hashanah, and the rest of the time they would go back to learning. And he is very upset about them. He says if the Tzibor is going to see that Talmidei Chachamim are not coming to say Selichos properly, then they themselves also want to say Selichos properly. So although they might have the best of intentions, they want to go and learn and stick with the regular Siddurim, nonetheless it's inappropriate for this time of year, he says. V'lachein roi v'nachen. It's most appropriate lehem b'yaiser liyos heima rishonim b'chol davar sheb'kedusha. Talmidei Chachamim, those people who are learning Torah all the time, should be the first one to show up for Selichos, and from them the rest of Klal Yisrael will see and make sure that they are doing tshuva properly. So this is just a push for us to dedicate ourselves to making sure we're available for Selichos. I remember one of our Rebbeim would tell me in Beis Medrash that once Selichos season starts, roughly a week before Rosh Hashanah, he lowers the level of the Shiur. Whatever he feels, he usually gives a Shiur on a certain level to his Bachrim, but he feels once Selichos starts and everyone's waking up earlier and they're more tired, he realizes that he can't mum them the same level as they could maybe the rest of the year. Whatever. Either some yeshivas they say Selichos very late, every night after Chatzai. Some yeshivas, and most like many places, they're saying it earlier in the morning. So for a young bachrim, or even not such young bachrim, the change in schedule could be challenging. And so he would instead of money them, I guess, so to speak, he just deliberately lowered the level of the Shiur in such a way where he felt that they would still, of course, be learning, but at the same time, they would not chas v'shalom take away from any of the Selichos that was imperative to say during this time of year. Okay, so that's just more of an introduction. Now,
Chabad doesn't say Selichos.
Okay, we'll get to the different minhagim. Right? It's not set in stone the exact days, how many days we need to say Selichos. Different minhagim. We'll discuss a little bit later when we start with the common customs and other customs as well. Now, as we mentioned briefly before, one of the biggest challenges of Selichos, besides the getting up early, is the words. It's very hard. The words they're written poetically. Even if we're familiar with Hebrew very well, I took 2 years of Hebrew in high school. I took Regents on it. I feel comfortable in the Hebrew language. We used to take the test on it. But when it comes to Selichos, it's very challenging. And this was a great discussion in the Rishonim based on a pasuk in Koheles, which is source number 4 in the sheet. The pasuk in Koheles says, "Al tzavahel al picha." Do not be rash, not be quick with what comes out of our mouths. V'libucha al yamar lahoitzi davar, and our hearts should not be quick to put forth words of fnei halakim, ki halakim b'shamayim v'yata al aretz al kein yu devarecha matam. We should be careful. Our words should be measured. That's what Shlomo HaMelech is telling us in Koheles. So the Ibn Ezra, Rishon, sees over here on this pasuk a great opportunity for him to write. And I just quoted part of what he wrote. He wrote in the new print, it's columns and columns, where he's very upset. But first he says, listen, this pasuk is obviously teaching us how to guard our mouth, not just during the day when we have business associates or other casual conversations, to be careful how we measure our words. But he says, even when we come to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a person... He says, really, a person should be davening all day. We have so much to be thankful for the whole day, how much is going right for us appropriately in our bodies, physically, emotionally, in business. We could be davening all day. But he says, okay, we have certain set times, Chazal Karvei us, when we're supposed to dedicate for davening. But he says, but then I see there are some people who wrote these piyutim, these paragraphs, these poems, which are full of strange words and full of strange understandings, and many of them are written by Rabbi Lezer HaKalir, and I say, says the Ibn Ezra, that we shouldn't say them, because we don't know what we're saying. And therefore, says the Ibn Ezra, if a person would get up and say piyutim that he doesn't fully understand, and they're not written in the appropriate fashion of basic Hebrew structure language, you're going to violate this pasuk in Koheles of just opening our mouth too much and putting forth too many words to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that would not be appropriate. And I didn't quote the whole Ibn Ezra, but basically he has 4 problems with the piyutim that primarily written by Rabbi Lezer HaKalir, and others as well. Number 1, he says that many of the piyutim were written in a way of chidais or mashal. They're written in a way of a riddle or in a way of a mashal, and it's not clear exactly what the point we're getting to is. So people, usually when we dive in, the words are pretty straightforward. You get the translation of the words, you know exactly what's going on. But in the piyutim, it's not like that. Furthermore, he says that the lashon of piyutim is not pure lashon hakodesh. It's very much interspersed with Aramaic or even lashon paras u'madai. He says, or even lashon Yishmael. The Arabic words come in sometimes. It's not pure Hebrew. Number 3, he says that many times the piyutim mess around with the lashon zachar or nekeva. They're not makbid on the keeping things in the male tense or in lashon nekeva in the female tense. He says also they're constantly full of agadas and drushes and chazal, and they're not taking the psukim. Ein mikra yotzim de pshuta. Psukim are meant to be understood in davening in a simple, straightforward way, and therefore the conclusion of the Ibn Ezra is There's over 1,000 things that I can't understand in the Selichos. Says the Ibn Ezra, a person should not say these Selichos which he can't understand. A person should have in the set tefillah. And say less is better, says Ibn Ezra. So now, if you will leave at this point, our davening in shul will look very different on the Yom Noraim. I don't know, I wasn't Zeichet to be in Ibn Ezra's minyan, I don't know what it was like, but I can imagine he did not end davening, just an hour into Rosh Hashanah davening because he didn't say Selichos. I'm sure they were davening for hours and hours and beseeching Kadosh Baruch Hu's mercy. But nonetheless, Ibn Ezra is clearly very upset with many of our piyutim that have become part of our liturgy, become part of our davening, and he's saying it's better not to say them. Now, obviously, as we know, this is not the common custom. And many, as we'll soon see, are very upset with Ibn Ezra. But I did find one sefer that tries to, defend Ibn Ezra's position. Like, why is he getting so angry with the piyutim? And that's from the Imrei Pinchas. That's from Pinchas Kartzer, one of the first Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov. And he writes that, first of all, he says, why does he want to defend Ibn Ezra? This is a very interesting idea. Why does he want to defend Ibn Ezra? If all the Poskim, as we'll soon see, going to argue with Ibn Ezra. So Pinchas Kartzer writes that one time he was dreaming, he had a dream, and in his dream he got an aliyah, he went up to the Torah, and they told him in his dream, this is the Torah of the Ibn Ezra, the Sefer Torah that belonged to Ibn Ezra. So somehow when he woke up, he took that as a message to him that it's up to him to defend the words of the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra often is under attack by the other Rishonim or the other Svarim, and he felt this dream was a sign from him, Simon from Shemayim, that he should defend Ibn Ezra. Okay? If I would have such a dream, I would wake up and probably wouldn't know what to do with it. But Pinchas Kartzer knew what to do with his dream. And he writes that he gives a mashal. He says, sometimes you have a person who's walking down a long, dark tunnel. So we know there's two ends to the tunnel. There's light on both ends of the tunnel. Right? So he says, some people have good vision, and they're able to see the light where they came from, and that will guide them towards the end of the tunnel. Even though it might be long, but they can have that vision that they started with, and they can be able to carry them through the tunnel. Some people, he says, don't have such a good vision. Their eyes are not as strong, but they have good legs, and they know they've got to keep running, and they'll get closer and closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. He says, the light, the original light at the beginning of the tunnel was the Beis HaMikdash. That was the source of Kedusha and Torah for Klal Yisrael, for Doros in Eretz Yisrael. So the Tanoim, Ablezer HaKalir, and the early Ga'onim who wrote the original Piyutim still had some of that light. They had a very strong eyesight. They still were able to draw from some of the light to the Beis HaMikdash, and they were able to draw from that depth of Torah to write many of these Piyutim and Selichos. He says, we're coming at the end, we're the Ikvus of the Mashiach, so we're seeing already toward the light, towards the end of the tunnel, so we have these quick feet, he says, to run towards the Orf and Mashiach to start understanding the depth of the Mishalim. He says, but Ibn Ezra was sandwiched, so to speak, in the middle of the tunnel. He was too far from the Tanoim and the Amoraim and the Gainim, and too far away from the Or of Mashiach, so he didn't have the schus, the Siyat of the Shemaya, says the Pinchas Kartzer, to fully get to the depth of the Piyutim, therefore he was hesitant to say them. But he says, us right now in our generation, where we're getting the Or of Mashiach, and we're able to shed light on many of the mysteries of the Selichos, he says, of course, therefore we'll start saying the Selichos again. Okay, that's a defense. Well, no, we'll get to that in a minute. So the Maral, Reb Kiva Eger, the Aruch HaShulchan, many Svarim Paiskim from full gamut of Svarim, they all argue very strongly on Ibn Ezra. And the Maral, here in source number 6, one mistake I made over here in this copy, I didn't copy the whole Maral, so it looks like it's one long piece of Maral. Really, the two paragraphs in source number 6 are at the beginning and the end of Maral's whole long argument on Ibn Ezra, but the idea basically is, he says, that which Ibn Ezra was angry with all our Piyutim, says the Maral, Ani oimer ki loy chashu Chazal diktuk haloshin k'mayzeh. Chazal in Piyutim and Selichos are not so concerned with Hilchas diktuk. They weren't so concerned exactly how, if the language doesn't flow as we would typically find in Tanakh. Ki bevadai, the Psukim, he says, are the Psukim. V'im yesh davar zor b'loshin hu, if there's something strange in the way the Selicha, the Piyut is going, it's b'shvil drasha mat, because of certain drasha that Chazal felt we should be familiar with. Torah is not just a library book, leave it on the shelf and look at it when you need it. We have to be familiar with all the drushes of Chazal and the various psukim. So if there's something challenging in the phrases of the Selichos or the Piyutim, it's upon us to understand that there's a drasha here, and we have to do what we can to investigate to make sure that we understand it. He says in the top of the next paragraph, on the left paragraph, says Ibn Ezra since I've seen that Ibn Ezra went to the extreme to argue on the earlier generations, the earlier, the Gainim and the Tanaim who wrote the Piyutim were all well versed in the Derech HaChachma, Misha Sam Liba, V'daita Al Devreim. If we pay attention carefully and spend time to go into the Piyutim, we will see Yimatzei Ki Lo Yisaru Miderech HaEmes Af B'Dov HaKatan. They're full of truth and Divrei Chazal, and therefore we don't pay attention to Ibn Ezra. And even though it's challenging, and we'll try to discuss shortly some ideas how to overcome those challenges, nonetheless, the Maharal says, of course, we say all the Piyutim, all the Selichos, Reb Kiva Eger, and Shuvas, and source number 7 says basically the same idea. He says it's a machlokes who Rabbi Elazar Kalir was. Either he was the son of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the famous Rabbi Elazar who sat in the cave with his father for all those years that we discussed Lag BaOmer time, or he was a different Tana, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, or he was from one of the Ge'ainim. Fine, it's a machlokes. We don't know exactly where to put him on the chain of in our lineage of Torah scholars. But nonetheless, Rabbi Elazar Kalir and the other ones who wrote the Piyutim were great Talmidei Chachamim. They're all miyusad of the drush and agadas of Chazal and secrets of Torah, and therefore it says Reb Kiva Eger as well. Of course, we should say all the Selichos, and he says the last words. He says, "Vashem hatoiv yislach larav Ibn Ezra." Hakadosh Baruch Hu should send a forgiveness to Ibn Ezra al gadol shegasav ezeh, on his great mistake, on the fact that he was so vehemently opposed to saying the Selichos or the Piyutim, any Piyutim we have over Rosh Hashanah, and Reb Kiva Eger again is saying that we should say all the regular Piyutim. Aruch HaShulchan as well says this idea, and then he quotes the end of the bottom of the right paragraph to the top of the left paragraph. He says, "V'kasvu hakadmoinim shebepiyutei hakaliri." When the Kaliri or Elazar Kalir wrote the Piyut v'hachayos etc., which is the Father Kedusha on Rosh Hashanah morning, when he wrote that Piyut, liata eish sevivav, he was surrounded by fiery something that came down from the heavens. Meaning these are all written on Piruach HaKodesh. It's not a Chassidish Sefer, the Aruch HaShulchan. I mean, a Chassidish Sefer is also okay, but the Aruch HaShulchan was quite litvak, and nonetheless he was saying that the Messiah, this Messiah actually comes from Rabbeinu Tam. The Svarim quoted in the name of Rabbeinu Tam, the name of his father, the name of his Rebbeim. So maybe it's from Rashi or somebody else of the Rishonim who had this Messiah that when Rabbi Elazar Kalir wrote his Piyutim, he was surrounded by fire from heaven. So it's not something to play around with. He says, "Umilo Yira," says Aruch HaShulchan, "Shal Devreim Shira Kedusha v'Yira," and then he says it's full of Yira Shemayim and Kedusha. He says, "V'tipach Rucham Shal Ksilim," at the bones of those fools, Ha'ayimrim Shal Shayna Magumgu, who said that the words of the Selichos are Magumgum. What's a good word for that? Choppy, confusing, right? He doesn't quote Ibn Ezra by name, but he says he's obviously very upset with Ibn Ezra about saying that the words of the Selichos are confusing. We see many Selichos that we could understand, meaning the same people, same Rabbi Elazar HaKalir, who wrote some very challenging Selichos and Piyutim, also wrote some that are very easy to understand. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, what does that show us? It shows that if something is hard there, it's because it's hidden in it. He says also bekavana hidden in it is many secrets of the Torah. They hid many secrets of Torah within the words of the Selichos and the Piyutim. So don't think it was just by mistake that they took out their pen and wrote words that were hard for us to understand. It was deliberate, and it's up to us now to decipher the code. So I saw the son of the Shlah. I didn't make a copy of this, but the son of the Shlah, which is printed at the end of the Sefer HaShlah Kodesh, it's called the Vavei HaAmudim. So he writes, because of this challenge, because of this idea that it's so this concept that we can all relate to very well, that the words of the Selichos and the words of the Piyutim Rosh Hashanah are very hard. He says, because of this matter, Tikanti Tikkun Gadol. The son of the Shlah writes, I did a great fixing. I did a great job. That I made a chabura in the shul, chabura kadisha. I made a group in the shul. Sheyimatze asufos. There's little groups meeting on a regular basis. Sheyalamdu atfilos mereishish hashana adach hashana. They go through the siddur from Moedani, from the first page, or Tikkun Chatzos, whatever your siddur starts with, till the end. I don't know where your siddur ends. Either it's Tehillim or something else, and they get together on a regular basis. And this is before the days of art school or Mitzuda or anything else. And they just simply says at least they go through every word and explain every word. And sometimes they get into Pirushim. The Pirush Amilas Lepachas is, but at least they understand every word. Kedei, in order, Shlo Yitzaftefu Ke'oifos, Hamahagim u'mitzatzon. They shouldn't just be like birds who are chirping when it comes to davening. The son of the Shloh writes that would just get up by davening and we're just making noises with their mouths and have no idea what's going on. He says it's something that he was masakin in his shul. He says it was a great chizik for everybody, and that was, of course, a much easier way for us to understand if we would sit and actually take time to go through the Siddur Kavachaymer with our availability now of Art Scroll or any other Pirushim that are available to us to explain the words of the Selichos. I think it behooves us to do that in order that we can appreciate what's going on. However, in source number 9, I found the words of the Pele Yaitz very helpful. The Pele Yaitz writes, this was approximately 200 years ago. Pele Yaitz was a big Sephardi Rav in Bulgaria, and that whole area of, I don't know, it's called Russia or whatever, I don't know what it was called. What's modern day Bulgaria over there, former USSR, and the Sephardi Kehillah over there, Pele Yaitz was a Rav, and his sefer, it's like Musar / Halacha organized al Seder HaAleph base. So in the entry under Selichos, he writes as follows: Va'afilu mishu am haaretz. Even if someone is unlearned, ve'eni yedea ma shmoitz piv, and doesn't understand the words that he's saying, al kol panim yoyim ba'haslichos ois ba'ois teva b'teva. You should say each and every word deliberately of the Selichos carefully. B'kol bechi kol techina, with the sound of crying and the sound of supplicating HaKadosh Baruch Hu. B'yedea hakavana shu mevakish lefnei HaMelech Hashem tzvakos ala shachata al nefesh v'charada yilbash. At least with the basic knowledge, even if we don't understand the words we're saying, we should just realize that we're saying, so to speak, a secret code. We have these words that the Rishonim / Tanoim, the Einim, wrote for us and told us that these words will help us with our supplication for our Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the best we can do, of course, is understand what we're saying. But it says that Pele Yaitz, even if we don't understand what we're saying, we have to make sure to say the words carefully and with the basic idea of knowing that we are beseeching Kadosh Baruch Hu's mercy for the affairs that we did. V'imkoi yaseh, says the Pele Yaitz, if a person is able to do this, yiftach b'shem elakav, he should be confident in Hashem, ki kel rachum v'chanu numar b'desloach v'yachbetz v'maisamesa, Kadosh Baruch Hu will forgive us. So Pele Yaitz is giving a chizik to us. Even if we have a hard time understanding the words of the Selichos, nonetheless, we should make sure to say them appropriately, put in appropriate expression, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do his part, if, so to speak, putting it together. If we're not able to understand the words, at least the concept general that we're beseeching HaKadosh Baruch Hu Selicha. But then he writes a little musar further, and he says something that makes him very upset. He says, "V'achar Selichos," in the second paragraph, says, after Selichos, lo yomish ma'asais peri. Don't tarry. Don't just hang around from producing fruits. He says he's seen many people in his community that they would wake up early, they would rush through Selichos, rush through davening, and then they would go to the coffee shop. This is before Starbucks, but whatever coffee shop they have there, and they would sit around lishtois kafe. They would drink coffee. Umala osham bechanush shel goy. They would sit around and smoke a good pipe, maybe, or something. This is written about 200 years ago. He knew what was going on already then. And so he says, what's going on over here? They're getting up early to say Selichos. They're davening, they're rushing through in order to get to the coffee shop. He says, well, what kind of ridiculous business is this? Like he said before, at least say the words carefully and slowly. He says, he has a great phrase here. He says, Umala teven es habar. The people say, what does the straw have to do with the wheat? Meaning, they get up early, they say the words, and let them do what they want the rest of the day. There's religion in the morning in the shul, and the rest of the day they could spend their time, do what they want. And he's very upset with this. He says, if you're waking up early to say Selichos, and then you're showing yourself, like it says Umara, you're showing Shiroitz Eliyas and the Kikapayim, you're showing you want to be someone of clean hands, with Bar Levov and a clean heart, and then Vakach Hoylech Shoiva, then you're just going to go around and drezach in the streets and not be involved in Tshuva and not be involved in the Me'ah Rachamim. He's very upset with this, and he says we have to realize that the point here is to get us up early, to get us focused on Slicha, to get us ready for the Yom Adin. Make sure the rest of the day as well we're staying focused. Similarly, the Kav HaYashar, which was written a little earlier than Pele Yaitz, in 1700s.
What did you say in the bottom, the last over here, V'im?
Where are you?
Oh yes.
Some people wake up early and they daven Selichos, but then they're so tired when it comes to davening they fall asleep with the tefillin. He says we can all relate to this. Unfortunately, he says it's doimet to someone who wants to make a quick buck, but it costs him $100 to make a buck. Right? He wants to make a quick gold coin, but he throws away 100 gold coins. So we have to realize that says the Pele Yaitz in strong terms that we got to be focused on the Selichos, not just make sure we're Yaitz design, so to speak. Even though he said you could just say the words even if we don't understand them, but to make sure that we're in the right mindset, a growth mindset of being getting close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Similarly, the Kav HaYashar, written a little before the Peleyaitz, says, is a chiyuv on every person to say the piyutim b'simcha. It's interesting. He says, do it with simcha, u'bekavana salei b'safa brua. So, slichas, we don't think it's not simchas Torah, it's not Purim. We don't come to shul necessarily happy, but he says you have to realize that this is a great opportunity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us the month of El, Aseres Yemei Tshuva, and in the Doidi v'Doidi Li, even if, unfortunately, sometimes we don't feel beloved, that we're not acting in the way of belovedness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chazal telling us, is beloved to us, and He is chasing us for relationships, so we have to approach that b'simcha and realize that He says, Kol piyut u piyut, in each and every one of the slichos, yesh soidais nifloyim. There are great secrets. He says it should not be like a masa. He says that piyutim were neschabra pi atzas maloche maila, based on the counsel of Lezer HaKalir, so to speak, sought counsel with the malachim up above to get the best proper advice from them who are there in the inner know. I guess they got some inner, what's it called? What's it called when you inside trading?
Tip.
Yeah, inside, right? So Lezer HaKalir went up to get the inside tips from the malachim. He says that's why many of the piyutim go in the seder of Aleph Beis, or they go in the reverse of the Aleph Beis, right? And many of the newer slichas, like the Art Scroll, the other new ones, you see often they highlight when it's the name of the person who wrote it, in the acrostic, or if the Aleph Beis are somewhere hidden in there, or the backwards Aleph Beis, or other secret codes, so to speak, that are sometimes within the slichas. It says the Kav HaYashar, that was all bedafka, things that were hinted in there, because the Malachim told of Lezer HaKalir, that's the way we do the Zmiris up here. You want to know how they sing Zmiris and how they say Shiur to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Shmayim? It's based on various orders of the Aleph Beis, either backwards or forwards, for whatever reasons. I can't tell you more than that, but that's how they do it. And Lezer HaKalir therefore decided to write the Slichos in a similar way. He says, the Kabbalah, it says a couple lines down, a little scary line, it says, the Kabbalah biyadi, the piece of Canaan, I have a tradition from my elders, from the pious ones, Misha Mekel Ba'amiris Kroivit, someone who's lax in the saying of the Kroivit. Kroivit stands for Kol Rina Vishua Ba'alei Tzadikim. It's a way many of the Sfarim refer to the Piyutim and the Slichas. And he says, someone who's lax in saying the Slichas, V'oimish Ein Chiv Kol Kach, who says, it's not such an obligation. We say, he does not have a long life. This is quoted by many Svarim. I saw it here, Kav HaYashar, the Bach quotes it as well. In the Paiskim and the Mussar Svarim, many of them quote this idea that if a person has a lackadaisical attitude towards the Slichas, it's not good for your longevity. He says because there's many secrets, like we said before, hidden in them. And then he says a little bit of a scary story that happened to one of the Gedolei HaPayutim, which is from the times of the Rishonim. His name was Reb Shlomo ibn Gabirol. I'm not sure. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Shlomo. He wrote many piyutim that we say during the slicha. Some of the famous ones that he wrote, we say on Erev Rosh Hashanah, right? That's one of the pizmanim we say. Reb Shlomo wrote it, and similarly we say during the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, right? Nafshi b'she'elasi va'ami b'vakashasi. That pizman also written by Reb Shlomo. Many of the pizmanim he wrote, and some of them we don't know which ones he wrote, but he lived approximately 1,000 years ago, early times of the Rishonim. And when he was about approximately 30 years old, he was brutally murdered by an Arab, by a Ishmaeli, who was jealous of his knowledge in Kabbalah and his piety and whatever. I don't know, somehow that made him jealous. And the Arab killed him. Not only did it kill him, then he took the body of Reb Shlomo and buried him in his own garden, next to his trees. Now, the Kav HaYashar is bringing the story. Of course, it's an unfortunate, gruesome story, but he's trying to show how kaddish these people were, even b'misasa. The Arab took the body, Rahman al-San of Reb Shlomo that he just murdered, buried him in his garden, and a nace happened, and all the fig trees that this Arab had started producing these amazingly large, luscious figs, much way before the rest of the season when the other fig trees were producing. And it came to the knowledge of the local governor, the local officials, and they were very disturbed. What was this guy doing that he was getting the crop 3 months before everyone else, and he was getting these big luscious figs? And they interrogated him, and he was filled. This guy got filled with a pachad. He was scared, and he couldn't even. He didn't want to say what he did. He was afraid of the authorities. Eventually, he was scared enough that he spilled the beans. And the Arabs were so upset at him that he killed his Jew, and that's why his fruits were so being so well. They were being so productive, his fruit trees. He was killed himself, and I don't know exactly what happened to the body of Reb Shlomo. Maybe they took him out and gave him a proper burial. I don't know what happened. But Kav HaYashar brings a story just to show us the kedusha of this Reb Shlomo who was nifter. He was killed. When he was approximately 30 years old, and nonetheless the kedusha that emanated from him was giving off this make these trees produce such a high volume of fruits. He just ends off. He says, "Aklal ha'oila ki kol ha'eda adas Hashem kulam kedoshim v'gedolei hadar tiknu piyutim." Us Klai Yisrael, we are kadosh, and the gedolei hadar were the ones who established for us these piyutim. V'lachein toiv lechaven el haremes shem ha'machaber. We should have in mind when we say the piyutim to the person who wrote it, as we can often see, it's bolded, the letters of the person who wrote it, or the aleph base, and we should just have the basic kavanah that at least the zechus of the author should be a zechus for us when we say it, and be nachas ruach for Kodesh Baruch Hu, and become for a slichus. Okay, so that basically is the idea that although the Ibn Ezra was upset with the our piyutim and our slichos, and it's interesting that the Sfardim, when they say slichos for the whole month of El, they say the same slichos every day for a whole month. And their slichos is a little bit different than ours in the fact that their piyutim are not the same piyutim we say. Many of them are easier to understand, similar to what the Ibn Ezra was upset with. He didn't go many with the ones that we are commonly in Ashkenazi and more familiar with. But nonetheless, they're saying plenty of slichos that have hard words as well. And there's, as we know, within the slichos himself, there are different nuschos. There's nusach Poland, there's nusach Lita, there's nusach Hungary. Every kehillah in Europe adapted different nuschos to adapt to different. There was hundreds of slichos and piyutim written over the times of the Rishonim and the Gainim, even from the Tanaim. That I didn't properly research how each kehillah in Europe adapted their nusach, but now that we're hundreds of years later, we all have a. We just buy the printed slichas, and we go with every shul daven. You either hear they daven, I think nusach Lita. If you go to other places in New York, many places I used to daven nusach Poland. So every kehillah will daven or nusach they follow. But the idea is that slichas are not to be taken lightly, and we should, at the best, make use of the art scroll or something else, and or we can make a group in the shul to study the slichas to understand it. But in case we don't have the time to probably do that, at least we have the Pel Yait's idea that should not. Think that we're just saying the words for nothing. The saidas that are tamim, that are hidden within those words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be lift them up before him, and they should be a schus for us. Now, in English, from a Chalashon, right? So technically, halachically, there's no concern with that. It's definitely okay. But I don't know if you're going to get the segulas, so to speak, of the slichos said in English. So, that's why I think it's good to look ahead a little bit, the night before, just for a couple of minutes, even just to get the basic structure of what we're going to be saying the next day. It doesn't have to take a couple of hours; it can just be a couple of minutes, because especially if you have to do it a few times, many of the slichos they use the same similar terminologies. We'll just be more familiar with it. I use a pencil time to underline certain things which I have a hard time with, just to remember, to look, different. Every person will, can discover their own tricks how to make it easier for them. But again, halachically you could say it in English, but I think if you want to get the schoolers of the depths that's hidden in it, it's probably better.
Well, especially
the original Lashon.
He says when he was up in Shemaim, he got all those tips,
right.
But the forwards and backwards, the aleph base.
That's the schoolers. You won't get
backwards.
Right, you won't get that in English, but the understanding of it you'll get in English. So okay. All right, now I want to discuss a little bit the idea of when to start saying slichos. So as Rabbi Gertzen brought up before,
even the parts of slichos that you say every day, like the tachnun,
right?
So that's something you're familiar with. So that's. You say that's a good school too. If you say,
right.
If you
understand. Psukim, we don't show, the psukim from Tehillim also are a good school, even if they don't have all the aleph, base, backwards, and forwards. Okay, Rabbi Gertzen mentioned before a little bit about the time when we start saying slichos and different minhagim. So again, the Gemara doesn't tell us; it's not set in stone from Chazal when we start saying slichos. We all know that the Yemei El through Yom Kippur, those 40 days are Yemei Racham V'Slichos, and the custom by most Sfardim is to say slichos for the whole month of El and Seres Yemei Tshuva. The Ga'ainim discussed different minhagim. The common minhag amongst Ashkenazim is to start the week of Rosh Hashanah. Now the problem is that depending when Rosh Hashanah falls out, so some years we end up with more because we want to have a minimum, according to our minhag, of 4 days of slichos. The reason for that is Mishmur brings down from El Rab and other poskim that just like a carbon needs 4 days to check it beforehand to make sure it has no blemishes, we are like the pasuk says by the Rosh Hashanah Vasisim Oila, we should make ourselves like the carbon. We should view ourselves as being makriv ourselves Rosh Hashanah. So just like a carbon needs a minimum of 4 days, so therefore our minhag Ashkenaz is to have a minhag. A minimum of 4 days of slichos. So this year Rosh Hashanah falls out on a Thursday, so we'll start slichos on a Sunday. Anytime Rosh Hashanah will fall out on a Monday or Tuesday, so then we'll start slichos a whole week before that, and we'll end up with, so to speak, extra days of slichos, which is for our benefit as well. Even though people sometimes kvetch about it, but it's for our benefit. But nonetheless, we all have the minhag, whether we're starting it exactly like this year, 4 days before Rosh Hashanah, or we're starting a week and a half before Rosh Hashanah, we always start on Matzei Shabbos. And the question is why. So of course it's convenient to always start in a set time, but why is particularly Matzei Shabbos? So the Leket Yosher, which is either a very, very late Rishon or very early Achron, he was a Talmud of the Trumas Hadeshen, early 1500s. He writes in the name of his Rebbe. First, he says that there's a minimum of 3 days of Selichos. I said 4 before. He says 3 because just like Matan Torah, Klal Yisrael needed 3 days to prepare for Matan Torah. But then he says a couple lines down. He says we always start Selichos on the beginning of a week. Because we want to be as close to Shabbos as possible. He says why? Because everybody's custom is to sit and learn on Shabbos afternoon. In the days of Rebbe, the Trumas Hadeshen, a person has to go to work. He has time to learn. He brings a home medrash. He says a couple lines down. He says, we start on a Sunday, Matzei Shabbos. Why? Because we're coming right off a day spent of Limud Torah. We're happy because of the mitzvah we had to learn of Torah on Shabbos. Also we had a Geshmak Chant and a Geshmak Oynik Shabbos. V'Amina and Chazal tell us, the Shechina doesn't rest on Klal Yisrael. If a person is an Atzel, is lazy, lackadaisical, or if he's depressed, he's sad, only mitoich Simcha Shel Mitzvah. We have to start the Shechina will only come after a person's in a ideal state of a Simcha Shel Mitzvah. He says, therefore, it's appropriate to start the Selichos mitoich Simcha Shel Mitzvah, which is right away on Sunday morning. So he doesn't say Matzei Shabbos, particularly he says right away after Shabbos. So for the Leket Yosher itself, it would sound like even Sunday morning would be sufficient. But the idea of starting on a Sunday, according to Leket Yosher, is because we're coming off of Shabbos, and a Shabbos is spent in learning Torah. That would be a big push for the Shabbos afternoon Seder here, that especially the Shabbos before Selichos, to make sure we're here to learn, so we'll get the right mindset going into Selichos. The Rivas Ephraim and Shuvas quotes from a Sefer Argadal, a similar idea that the Shabbos before an event always has the kedusha, always has the energy of what's going to happen. The Shabbos before we start Selichos, we read the Parsha of Atem Nitzavim. That mentions the idea of tshuva. So that sets us in the mindset for starting tshuva. That right away, Matzei Shabbos. I saw similarly in the Sefer brought down the gematria of Atem Nitzavim Hayayim is 694, which is the same gematria of Lamoid L'Slichos, to get up for Slichos. So that meaning the day we start reading the Parsha of Atem Nitzavim, right away afterwards, we're Lamoid L'Slichos, same idea, to get up for Slichos. I saw similarly a nice idea in the name of the Alta Belzer Rebbe. He said over why we start Dafka Matzei Shabbos. He says Chazal tells, the Gemara on Shabbos tells us, anybody who says Vayechulu on Shabbos, Nasa Shutuf LaKadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Bereishis. Gemara tells us that when we say Vayechulu on Shabbos, we become a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the creation of the world. He says, of course, the Welt Zok, that with a business partner, you never close the door. If you have a deal with somebody, you have a partnership in a business, and the partner comes in the middle of the night, you're always available, because, with him, you're making a lot of money, so you're never going to close the door on your partner. So he says, listen, we just spent the whole Shabbos, we said Vayechulu, we were Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we became a Shutuf in the Ma'aseh Bereishis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so right away, Matzei Shabbos, we come knocking back on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's door, says the Belzer Rebbe, and says, okay, we're your partner now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so now open up a door for us. Don't be noyal, the Shari Tzvilah, keep the door open for your business partner, and we makabel our Slichos Brachim of Ratzon. That's the idea for the Belzer Rebbe, this idea why Dafka, we jump in Matzei Shabbos right away to start saying Slichos. And I'm not going to get involved in this so much, but we know the custom is that we start Dafka after Chatzos. The Sfarim HaKadoshim tell us that until Chatzos, there's different kitrugim. So the Chatzchila we only say it after Chatzos. The Ramosha and others have a tshuva. What happens? There are certain shuls that the people won't come together. Many won't come for Chatzos. We're not discussing that right now. But over here we say it, and most shuls say it after Chatzos. So the Chatzchila we say it after Chatzos Matzei Shabbos. It's late, but we'll take a nap for a little bit on Shabbos afternoon, and we'll mechazik ourselves to say the Slichos properly. Another thing I want to discuss briefly is there's a lot of discussion in the Poskim about the Piyut Machnise Rachamim. That the Piyut Machnise Rachamim and other similar Piyutim, where it seems like, if you go through the simple translation of the words, we are davening to the Malachim to bring up our Tfilos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's the problem with that? So the Yerushalmi says in source 13 over here, the Yerushalmi brings down, Rav Yudan brings down the shame of his Rebbeim, that what's the difference between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a Melech Basav Adam? It says, a Melech Basav Adam, if a person has a tsar, he has a problem, something distressing him, he needs to go speak to the king, you don't just walk into the king's palace, you come up to the king's gate, there's guards, there's people you speak to first, and they see if the king's available for you. They'll bring your words into the king's first chamber, then the second chamber. There's a whole procedure we have to follow just to speak to the king. We don't just bust open the door, unannounced, and start spilling forth our problems to the king. And even if we get through the first door, so to speak, there's no guarantee we'll ever even get up to the king that he'll ever be able to help us. Says the Yerushalmi, however, in Bas al Adam Tzar, a person is ever in a situation of distress, lo yitzavach, lo yilamachov, lo yilaGavriel. He doesn't cry out not to Machol, not to Gavriel. Ela li yitzavach, says the Yerushalmi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, scream out to me. I'll answer immediately. Like the pasuk says, Kol sheyikor b'shem Hashem yimolet. Anybody calls the name of Hashem, I will send this salvation. So for this Yerushalmi, many of the poskim say it seems like we're not supposed to daven at all to malachim, and therefore they're very upset about the piyut machnisei rachum and other piyutim which seem to say that we're davening to malachim. They should bring up our tefillos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Maral was upset with it. He wanted to make a slight modification in some of the nuschos, the Selichos, to fix this problem, in order that we should be able to say it. The Chassam Sofer personally did not say Machnisei Rachamim. He would just say a longer Tachanun during the Selichos, so that he wouldn't, so it wouldn't look like he was skipping it. But in his shul, he would let the Chazan say it, but he himself personally would not say it. And there's different minhagim. The common custom is to say it, and the question is why. What about this Yerushalmi? So in the Sefer Tanya Rabbasi, which is source 14, is the Rishon. There's a contemporary Ram Rurenberg, and other Rishonim say similar ideas as well. He brings down, it's in the right paragraph where it kind of starts changing, starts going on a tilt down. I don't know the way the copy worked out, the way it came like that. He brings the name of Rebbe Vigdor, who was an early Rishon. He says, there's no problem here of making a shituf, so to speak, of davening to the malachim. It's not that we're making a shituf, a partnership with the Kodesh Baruch Hu and another deity. He brings a raya from a Gemara. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, L'olam yivakish adam rachamim shiu akom ma'amitzines koichai milmata v'al yutzar milmala. Let me just explain this. Meaning, we're davening here, we're in St. Louis, Missouri, we're in New York, we're anywhere in the world, even in Yerushalayim, our Kodesh, we're davening. There's quite a distance from the time the words enter our mouth until somehow they get up to whatever sha'arim they have to get up to. There's a lot of interference between our mouths and the sha'arim. There's all types of malachi chavo that unfortunately a person himself sometimes creates by doing averis that could impede his tefillah. There's all types of other shmuts in the world that could, for whatever reason, stop our tefillah. There's lots of blockades that unfortunately tax collectors, toll collectors, all types of things that could stop our tefillah from getting to where it wants to get to, where it needs to get to. Says Rabbi Yochanan, a person shows me vakesh that any koyach kedusha that could help his tefillah get up, anything that can boost his tefillah, give a little turbo boost to his tefillah, should get onto his tefillah, shalat and help get up. So it says the Yerushalayim, when we're davening Machnisi Rachamim and other tefillahs that it seems like we're davening to Malachim, we're not davening to the Malachim should help us. We're just asking the Malachim, could you please make sure our tefillah gets to where it needs to, because unfortunately, sometimes again, like a person's own averis are blocking his tefillahs, or other circumstances of chet in the world in general could stop tefillahs from properly going to where they need to. So we're asking, please make sure my tefillah gets to HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way it needs to get there, in the most appropriate fashion. So it's not that we're davening to the malachim that they should answer our tefillahs, but rather we're davening to the malachim that they should make sure that our tefillahs kind of cut through the shmutz and get to where it needs to get to, so it can appropriately be answered. It brings a medrash in Shiur with a similar idea on the pasuk of Vishpati Eschem B'nai Yerushalayim, that the Knesset Yisrael says to the malachim who stand by the gates of tefillah, by the gates of Dima, that they should please make sure that no malachi ra are standing in the way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu hearing our tefillahs. And so similarly in the Jewish Marie Bruna, he's a later Rishon time of the Shumas Hadeshen, he says also a similar idea that when we're saying Machnisi Rachamim, he says it's really an idea of shiflus. We're saying, of course, we could just speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we know that we unfortunately are filled with aveira. We're unfortunately filled with sin that impedes our tefillah. So we could technically beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we don't feel adequate enough, that we don't feel we're on the madreg enough to do it. So we're saying, Machnei Rachamim, please, malachim, who have this ability to get through to higher levels, please help me, because I'm not in the proper level to just go up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm Malei Averis. So we're asking Malachim just for chizuk and help in getting our tefillahs to the proper way. And that's why the common minhag is, amongst many, to do say these tefillahs of B'chisei Rachamim, etc. So I want to end off with a drop chizuk I saw from the Lekach Chaliva of Ram Shor Shlita. He says, there's many Rashi Tevis, many acronyms for El. He brings from the pasuk in Parshas B'chul Koisai, Middle Teichacha, the pasuk says, V'naflu oivechem lifnechem lachar. And your enemies, numerous enemies, will fall before us by sword. Those words, v'naflu oivechem lifnechem lachar, those Rashi Tevis, if you mix up the letters, also spells El. He says it's a remez to El in these days. We have to go out and have the Muhammad neged the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, why is it plural? Oivechem. The Yetzer Hara is one person, one being. He says, but it's true the Yetzer Hara is one being, but why say Oivechem plurally? He says because the Yetzer Hara has many shluchim and he has many masks. So just because we recognize him in one day, in one action, doesn't mean we recognize the Yetzer Hara. He has numerous personality traits or numerous personality disorder. I don't know what you want to call it. How he manifests himself in different ways. So we have to recognize the numerous faces of the Yetzer Hara. He says the pasuk says Lachar. We have to destroy our enemies with the sword. The sword, of course, refers to tefillah, as Yaakov Avinu said, "Lakachti es amori b'char Vakashti, right? I conquer them with my sword and my bow. Charbi, the Targum Onkelos says, refers to my davening. He says, Sheb'esat Tefillah, that's the time to strengthen our sword during particularly these days of El. So we should be zeicha that these days of El, which are Yimei Ratzah, and we have 2 weeks now till our minhag gets to start Selichos. We should mechazik ourselves properly in Tefillah, whether we can understand all the words of Selichos properly or we can't. At least we should recognize the opportunity we have to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with these Yimei Racham and Ratzah. We should be zeicha to Ksiv Chesiv Torah, good Gebench Shiur. I just want to end off one more Chassidish Shavar to Degel Machne Ephraim. The Einikel from the Baal Shem Tov brings down the name of Baal Shem Tov. He says that the Amir Selichos is Makar of the Geula. I don't know what that, I can't explain why, but that's what the Baal Shem Tov is to say over, that saying Selichos will be Makar of the Geula, so we should be Zeicha, not only to Chesiv Torah, but also to the Geula. Meher b'Yemeinu, Amen.
You get up